3 books of philosophy written to the Athenians, by that famous, most excellent, and approved philosopher and physician, Paracelsus, done into English for the increase of the knowledge and fear of God, by a young seeker of truth and holiness. O Lord our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth! Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts, the whole earth is full of his glory. From the perpetuity of creatures is meant the eternal Creator, from greatness omnipotent, from order and arrangement wise, from government good. Printed in London 1657. The first book of philosophy written to the Athenians by Paracelsus. Text 1. All created things are of a fraile and perishing nature, and had all at first but one only principle or beginning. In this principle, all things under the cope of heaven were inclosed and lay hid, which is thus to be understood, that all things proceeded out of one matter, and not every particular thing out of its own private matter by itself. This common matter of all things is the Great Mysterie, which no certain essence and prefigured of formed idea could comprehend, nor could it comply with any property, it being altogether void of color and elementary nature. The scope of this Great Mysterie is as large as the firmament, and this Great Mysterie was the mother of all the elements, and the grandmother of all the stars, trees, and carnal creatures. As children are born of a mother, so all created things, whether sensible or insensible, all things whatsoever, were uniformly brought out of the Great Mysterie. So that the Great Mysterie is the only mother of all perishing things, out of which they all sprung, not in order of succession or continuation, but they all came forth together and at once, in one creation, substance, matter, form, essence, nature, and inclination. Text 2. That this mystery was such as never any creature besides was, or ever saw the like, and yet was the first matter, out of which all things proceeded, cannot better be understood than by the urine of man, which is made of water, air, earth, and fire, but is neither of these, or was it like to either, yet all the elements, by another generation arise from thence, and so pass into a third generation. But inasmuch as the urine is but a creature, there may be some difference between this and that. For the Great Mysterie is increated, and was prepared by that great artificer. Never shall there be any like it, nor doth this return, or is it brought back again unto itself. For as cheese becomes no more milk, so neither doth that which is generated of the mystery return into its first matter. And though all things indeed may at length be reduced into their pristine nature and condition, yet do they not return again unto the mystery. That which is once consumed can by no means be again recovered, but it may return into that which was before the mystery. Text 3. Furthermore, though the Great Mysterie be indeed the mother of all things, both sensible and insensible, yet were not all things that grow, nor the living creatures, nor such like things, formed therein. But thus are we to consider of it, that it left and assigned general mysteries to all things, that is, to men and living creatures, and those of one sort it gave a mystery to propagate themselves after their own form. In like manner it bestowed a peculiar mystery on every other thing to bring forth its own shape by itself. From the same original also, which the primary mystery ordained, spring those mysteries from which another mystery may be produced. For a star, alias muck, is the mystery of beetles, flies and gnats, and sea. Milk is the mystery of cheese, butter, and such like. Cheese is the mystery of worms that breed in it. So again worms are the mystery of perished cheese. And thus there are two sorts of mysteries. The Great Mysterie, which is uncreated, the rest, being of the same kindred, are called special mysteries. Text 4. Now seeing it is plain that all perishing things did spring and arise out of the uncreated mystery, we must know that nothing created was brought forth sooner or latter one than another, nor this or that thing apart, but altogether and at once. For the greatest secret, to wit, the goodness of the Creator did create or lay all things together upon that which is uncreated, not formally, essentially, or by way of qualities, but everything lay hid in the uncreated as an image or statue doth in a piece of timber. For as the statue is not seen till the wast would be cut away that so it may appear, so is it in the uncreated mystery, that which is fleshly or sensible, and that which is insensible, both came forth and got to its own form and kind by a right and instituted separation. Here was no hacking or hewing, but everything passed into form and essence, and see. Never was there workman anywhere to be found so accurate and industrious in separation, who with like skill could make even the least and lightest grain useful, and put life into it. Text 5. Understand it thus, not as if a house were built out of the Great Mystery, or that the living creatures were first gathered together and laid in an heap, and then perfected, nor the other things that grow likewise, but as a physician makes a compound of many virtues, though the matter be but one, wherein none of those virtues appear which lie hid under the same. So must we think, that all sorts of creatures under heaven were set in order and put into the Great Mystery, not perfectly according to their substance, form and essence, but after another subtle manner of perfection, unknown to mortal man, whereby all things were shut up into one. We all were created of that which is fraile and mortal, and are born much after the manner of Saturn, who in the separation of himself brings forth all forms and colors, yet none of them appear visible in him. Since then the mysteries of Saturn yield such like procreations. Much more doubtless the Great Mystery hath in it this miracle, in whose separation all other superfluous things are cut off, yet is there nothing so needless and useless but can bring forth out of itself some other increase, or fit matter thereof. Text 6. Know therefore that several and various chips or fragments fell out in the cutting or carving of the Great Mystery, whereof some became flesh, of which there are infinite sorts and forms. Others were sea monsters, of wonderful variety also. Some became herbs, other fell into wood, abundance into stones and metals. A twofold way or manner of art may at least be considered by them that ask how the omnipotent God did or could carve out those things. First, in that he always ordained life and increase. Secondly, in that it was not one only matter that fell off everywhere alike. For if a statue be cut out of a piece of timber, all the chips thereof are wood. But here it was not so, but everything received its own form and motion by itself. Text 7. Thus the distribution followed the operation of the Great Mystery, and the things that were separated from those that were superfluous appeared more excellent. At the same instant also divers other things proceeded out of those very superfluous things that were chipped off. For the Great Mystery was not elementary, though the elements themselves lay hid therein. Nor was it a carnal thing, though all sorts of men were comprehended in it. Neither was it wood or stone, but such was the matter that it contained every mortal thing in its essence without difference or distinction, and afterward endowed every one of them with its own particular essence and form in the separation. An example whereof we have in meat. If a man eat it, he gathers flesh, to which the meat was nothing like before. When it is putrefied it breeds gross of which it had not resemblance before at all, which holds much more true in the Great Mystery. For in the mysteries it is most manifest that one thing became stones, another flesh, another herbs, and so afterwards passed into various and infinite forms. Text 8. Now when the separation was made, and everything brought into its own form and property, so as that it could subsist alone of itself, then might the substantial matter be known. That which was fit to be put together was so compacted. The rest, in respect of substance, remained void and thin. For when things were first set together, all could not equally be joined, but the greatest part remained vacant. This is plainly to be seen in water, which when it is frozen, the ice thereof is but a very small quantity. So was it in the separation of the elements. Whatsoever could be compacted was made stones, flesh, metals, wood, and such like. The rest remained more rare and empty, to wit, everything according to its nature and property of the planets. For when things were first compacted, that Great Mystery was just like smoke, which spreadeth very wide, yet hath it very little substance besides a small quantity of soot. All the other space, where the smoke is very mere and pure air, as may be seen in the separation of the smoke from the soot. Text 9. Separation was the principle and mother of all generation. The greatest miracle of all in philosophy is separation. Yet should not men study these things beyond their capacity and reason? How such things were, and might be made, is somewhat to be known by this example, viz. If you put vinegar to warm milk, you shall see a separation of the heterogeneous parts many ways. Thus the true fat, or trap hat, of metals brought every metal into its own nature. So was it in the mystery. For as the macerated tincture of silver, so also the great penetrating mystery, reduced everything into its essence, distinguishing and separating all things with such wonderful diligence, that every substance had its due form. Now that magic was a most singular secret that directed such an entrance, which if it were divinely done by the deity, it would be to no purpose to study for it. Nor doth the deity make known himself to us hereby. But if that magic were natural, certainly it was most wonderful, very excellent for quickness of penetration and swiftness of separation, the like whereof nature can never more give or express. For whilst that was busy at work, one piece fell into the elements, another into invisible things, another into the vegetables, which doubtless must needs be a very great and singular miracle. Text 10. Inasmuch then as the Great Mystery was full of such essence and deity with an addition of the most eternal one, the separation was before any creature. When this began, then every creature sprang forth and appeared in its majesty, power and free will, in which state also it shall still flourish even to the end of the world, or that great harvest, when all things shall be pregnant with fruit, which shall then be gathered and carried into the barn. For the harvest is the end of its fruit, nor doth it intend aught but the corporal destruction of all things. And though their number be almost infinite, yet is there but one harvest only, when all the creation shall be reaped, and carried into the barn. Nor will this harvest, the end of all things, be less admirable, than that great mystery was wonderful in the beginning, notwithstanding the free power of things be the cause of their mutual affection and destruction. For there is nothing but hath both love and hatred. The free will flourish and is conversant in virtues, but is either friend or foe in our works. But these things belong not to separation. For that is the sequestratrix that gives to everything its form and essence. Text 11. When the Great Mystery first separated all things, the first separation was of the element, so that before all other things the elements break forth into their act and essence. The fire was made heaven and the wall of the firmament. The air was made a void space, wherein nothing appeareth or is to be seen, possessing the place wherein is no substance or corporal matter. This is the coffer or enclosure of the invisible destinies. The water passed into liquor, and took its place about the chanels and hollowness of the center within the other elements and the ski. This is the hutch of the nymphs and monsters of the sea. The earth was coagulated into dry land, and is upheld by none of the other elements, but is propped up by the pillars of the occultes. These are the strange and wonderful works of God. The earth is the chest of those things that grow, which are nourished by it. This kind of separation was the beginning of all creatures, and the first distribution both of these and all other creatures. Text 12. After the elements were thus brought forth into their essence, and divided from each other, that every one subsisted severally in its own place without prejudice to one another, then a second separation followed the first, which proceeded from the elements. Thus everything that lay in the fire was transformed into the heavens, one part thereof as into an ark or cloister, another part proceeded out of it as a flower out of a stalk. Thus the stars, planets, and whatsoever is in the firmament, were brought forth. These sprang out of the element, not as a stalk groweth with its flowers out of the earth, for these grow out of the earth itself, but the stars came out of the heavens by separation onely, as the flowers of silver ascend, and separate themselves. So that all the firmaments are separated from the fire. But before the firmament was separated from the fire, every jot thereof was but one element of fire. For as a tree in winter is but a tree, but when the spring comes the same tree, if that be separated from it that may be separated, puts forth leaves, flowers and fruit, which is the time of its harvest and separation. Just such another harvest was there in the separation of the Great Mystery, which could by no means withhold or defer itself any longer. Text 13. Another separation out of the air followed the separation of the elements, at one and the same instant with that of the fire. For the whole air was predestinated unto all the elements. Yet is it not in the other elements of mixture in any manner and measure, but it doth assume and occupy all manner of things in all the elements, only what was before surrounded it doth not possess. For no mixture of the elements continued fast united, but every element betook itself to its own free power without dependence on another. As soon as this element thus parted from the rest out of the Great Mystery, presently out of it were distributed fates, impressions, enchantments, superstitions, shrewd turns, dreams, divinations, lotteries, visions, apparitions, fatacests, melusines, spirits, daemi, durdles and nufrins. At the separation of the things aforesaid, everything had its proper place and peculiar essence appointed it. Hence things invisible in themselves became sensible unto us. No element was by the supreme secret made more thin than the air. The daemi dwell in the rocks, for such they're created with the air unto a vacuity. The dirtles betook themselves into woods, for their separation was into such a kind of substance. The nufferins inhabit in the air or pores of the earth. The Molossines stepped aside into man's blood, for their separation from the air was into bodies and flesh. The spirits were distributed into air that is yet in a chaos. All the rest are in peculiar places of the air, every one keeping its place assigned to it, and separate from the element of the air, yet so as that it must of necessity live therein, nor can it change that place for another. Text 14. By the separation of the elements, the water was gathered into the place which the mystery had allotted. Thus everything whatsoever that lurked in the elementary virtue and property thereof was more fully divided by a second separation, and the water parted into many special mysteries, all which had their matrix from the element of water. One part thereof became fishes, and they are of many forms and kinds, some beasts, some salt, much of it sea plants, as corals, trines and citrons, a great deal of it sea monsters contrary to the manner and natural course of the elements, very much became nymphs, sirens, drams, lorand, nesta, some reasonable creatures, having something eternal in their body, and propagating themselves, some also that die totally, and some that are again separated in time. For the perfect separation of the element of water is not yet made. But as the great harvest hastneth and cometh on, a new increase may spring up every year in the element of water. And this separation is made at the same instant when the other elements are separated, in one day's work, and by the motion of sequestration. So that everything thus living in the water was at once in a minute and moment of time created and made manifest by the separation. Text 15. In like manner when the element of the earth was disjoined from the rest, the earthy separation was made, to wit, the separation of all things that do or did spring in or out of the earth. For at the first creation the four elements lay hid in all things alike in the Great Mysterie, which things also were separated after the same manner and in one instant, and were divided among themselves one after another by a second separation, which is elementary. And by this kind of elementary separation out of the element of the earth things sensible and insensible, those that are eternal and those that are not eternal were parted from one another, every one obtaining its peculiar essence and free power. All that was of a woody nature was made wood. The next was mines of metals. A third became marcasite, tocca, bismuth, pomegranate, metallic cobalt, millstone, and many other things. A fourth precious stones of many sorts and shapes, as also stones, sands, and lime. A fifth was made into fruit, flowers, herbs, and seeds. A sixth into sensible living creatures, whereof some partake of eternity, as men, others do not, as calves, sheep, and sea, whereof many kinds and differences might be reckoned up, for many more kinds were separated in the earthy element than in any other. For by the seed of two are all things propagated, that is, by the coming together of father and mother, which was not predestinated and ordained in the other elements. Here also are the nomi, sylvestras and lemurs, of which some are a lot to the mountains, some to the woods, some onely to the night. But the giants were parted into a third separation. There are great distributed essences too, as also strange miracles amongst men, cattle and all things that grow, which is a hard matter for any philosopher to find out, and therefore 'tis thought they were made besides the order and measure of nature. Text 16. After the four elements were from the beginning separated from each other out of the onely matter, as hath been said, in which matter notwithstanding their complexion and essence was nert, the complexions and natures issued out by that separation. The hot and dry went into the heavens and firmament, each cleaving apart into its own property. The hot and moist went into the air, by which the hot and moist are invisibly separated. The cold and moist turned into the sea and the parts adjoining. The cold and dry degenerated into the earth and all earthy things. And even contraries arose from the separation of the elements, which have no likeness at all to their elements. Of this sort is lime, which in respect of its own nature is not fire, though it ariseth out of the fire. The cause whereof is this, because the dissolution went too far off from the fiery nature in the separation of the element, for the fire hath both cold and moist in it. There is a fourfold fire. Therefore the colours that are from the fire are not always like unto it. One fire causeth a white and azure colour. The dry fire mocketh a red and green. The moist fire mocketh an ashy and black. The moist fire casteth a colour like saffron and red. For this reason one procreation is hotter than another, because one fire is more or less in degree than another. Nor is there but one simple and onely fire and no more, but there are some hundreds of fires, yet never one of the same degree with another. The procreation therefore of every of them is from its own subject, as a kind of mystery so ordained. Text 17. Nor did the water obtain one kind of complexion onely. For there were infinite waters in that element, which yet were all truly waters. The philosopher cannot understand that the element of water is onely cold and moist of itself. It is 100 times more cold, and not more moist, and yet is it not to be referred as well to the hotness as the coldness. Nor doth the element of water live and flourish only in cold and moist of one degree, no neither is it fully and wholly of one degree. Some waters are fountains, which are of many sorts. Some are seas, which also are many and divers. Other are streams and rivers, none of which is like another. Some watery elements were disposed of into stones, as the beryl, crystal, chalcedony, amethyst. Some into plants, as coral and sea. Some into juice, as the liquor of life. Many into the earth, as the moisture of the ground. These are the elements of water, but in a manifold sort. For that which groweth out of the earth, from the seed that was sown, that also belongs to the element of water. So what was fleshy, as the nymphs, belong also to the element of water. Though in this case we may conceive that the element of water was changed into another complexion, yet doth it never put off or passe from that very nature of the element from which it proceeded. Whatsoever is of the water, turneth again into water, that which is of fire into fire, that of earth into earth, and that of air into air. Text 18. In like manner must we think of the element of the earth, that all things that are out of the earth do retain the nature thereof. And though the mineral liquors may be taken for fire, yet are they not fire. Brimstone doth not therefore burn because it is of a fiery element. For that which is cold will burn as well as that which is hot. That which burneth to ashes is not the element of fire, but the fire of the earth. And that fire is not to be taken for the very element. Nor is it the element, but only the wasting of the earth, or of its substance. Water may burn and flame as well as anything else, and if it burn, then is it watery fire. Again, whereas the fire of earth will burn and blaze, it is not therefore to be accounted fiery, though it be somewhat like to fire. He is but a silly and sensual philosopher that calleth the element according to that which he perceiveth. Thus rather should he think, that the element itself is far another thing than such a fire as this. And for what cause? All that moisteneth is not the element of water. Even the element of earth may be brought into water, yet it remaineth earth still. Whatsoever likewise is in the earth, is of the element of earth. For it is, and is known by the property of that hour of which it proceeded, and to which it is like. A man may strike fire out of a flint and chalcedony. That is not element all fire, but a strong expression out of great hardness. Text 19. The element of the air hath many procreations in it, all which are yet mere air. Every philosopher should well understand this, that no element can begot another thing out of itself but that which it is of itself. Like ever begetteth its like. So then, seeing the air is invisible, it can bring nothing visible out of itself. And whereas it is impalpable, it can produce nothing that may be touched. Therefore, as I may so say, it doth malosinate. And though that be from the air, yet be the very air, and nothing else, yet the conjunction is made in another element, which is the earth. For here may a conjunction be made from the air to a man, as it cometh to passe by spirits in all witchcrafts and enchantments. The same may be said here as was of the nymphs, who though they live in the element of water, and are nothing but water, yet have they free dome to converse with things on the earth, and to generate with them. The like compaction also is there from the air, which may be seen and felt, yet as a procreation of the first separation, but only as a consequence. For as a beetle is bred of dung, so may a monster of the airy element assume a bodily shape with airy words, thoughts and deeds, by a mixture with that which is earthy. Nevertheless such kind of miracles and consequences do at last decay again into the air, as nymphs turn into water, just as a man by rotting is consumed and turned to earth, because he came from thence. Text 20. And thus the procreations proceeded one out of another by the great separation. From those procreations arose other generations, which have their mysteries in those procreations, not in like manner as the separation of the things aforesaid, but as a mistake, or abortion, or excess. Thunder comes from the procreations of the firmament, because that consisteth of the element of fire. Thunder is as it were the harvest of the stars at that very instant of time when it was ready to work according to its nature. Magical tempests rise out of the air, and their end, not as if the element of air begot them, but rather the spirit of the air. The fire conceives some things bodily, as the earth doth the gnomes. Likewise ordure comes from men and beasts, not from the earth. Laurend riseth from the original of water, yet it is not of the water. Many other things also proceed out of the store either through mistake or in due time. Deformed men, worms, and many more such like generations proceed from the impressions. The infection of countries, the plague, famine, is from the fatal storms. Beetles, cankers downs, breed in dung. By Laurend is found out the prophecy of that country, which is a kind of presage or guessing at strange, wonderful, and unheard of things to come. Text 21. As we have seen a threefold separation made out of the mystery into three sorts of forms, it remains now that we consider the fourth and last separation of all, after which there shall be no more, for then all the others shall perish, and be no longer a mystery. After the fourth all things shall be reduced into their first principle, and that only remain which was before the great mystery, and is eternal. Which is not so to be understood, as if I could be turned into anything, or as though anything could be made of me after the last separation, unless by death. For I shall be brought to nothing, as in respect of my beginning I came out of nothing. Now we must know how it comes to pass that all things are brought again into their original, when they are turned into nothing, then do they consist in their first being. First of all then we must look after that which is the first of all. And what that is that goeth I to nothing is no less than a mystery. My soul in me was made of something, therefore doth it not become nothing, because it was formed of something. But of nothing nothing is made, nothing is generated. A picture drawn on a table, as it is a picture, was doubtless made of something. But we were not so made of something, as an image in the air. And why so? But because we came out of the great, not out of the procreated mystery. Therefore are we brought to nothing. If you wipe off a picture with a sponge, so that nothing thereof remain, the table is as it was before. Thus all creatures shall be reduced to their first state, to wit, to nothing. That we may know wherefore all bodies must return into nothing, it is because of that which is eternal in the body's rational. The last separation of this kind is the ultimate matter. Then will there many procreations, mixtures, conversions, alterations, transmutations, and such like things be done, all which are past man's finding out. Text 22. Again, by philosophy it is manifest, that whatever is for the succor and preservation of any frail mortal thing is therewith also equally mortal, nor can that be joined again that is divided, as milk once turned into curds becomes milk no more. Thus may we reason also, that the great mystery returneth not into that out of which it came. Whence we may conclude, that all creatures are the picture of the highest mystery, and so nothing else but as a painted color is to the wall. Such is our life under heaven, that one thing as well as another may be destroyed and turned into nothing. For as the table or frame of a picture may be destroyed and burnt, so also may the great mystery, and we with it. And as all the things of the creatures are whipped away, minished and do perish with the mystery, as a forest which the fire burns into a little heap of ashes, out of which ashes but a little glass is made, and that glass is brought into a small barrel, which barrel vanisheth into wind. In like manner we also shall be consumed, still passing from one thing into another, till there be nothing of us left. Such as the beginning, such is the end of the creatures. If the cypress tree can spring out of a little grain, surely it may be brought into as small a quantity as that little kernel was at first. A grain and the barrel are alike. As it begins in a grain, so it ends in a barrel. Now when the separation is thus made, and everything reduced to its nature, or first principle, to wit, into nothing, then is there nothing within the ski but is endless and eternal. For that by which it is for ever will there flourish much more largely than it did before the creation, it having no frailty or mortality in it. As no creature can consume glass, so neither can that eternal essence be brought to nothing by that which is eternal. Text 23. The last separation being the dissolution of all creatures, and one thing consuming and perishing after another. Thereby the time of all those things is known. When the creatures once were, they had no utter ruin in them, for a new seed still supplieth the room of the old decayed thing. Thus there is somewhat eternal, not subject to ruin, in the things that are mortal, by renovation of another seed, which thing the philosopher knoweth not. No seed doth admit or constitute that which is eternal. Yet doth it admit putrefaction, when that which is eternal is taken into the eternal. In this respect man onely among all the rest of the creatures hath that which is eternal in himself joined with that which is mortal. According to what hath been said, the mortal and eternal are joined together. Understand, that which is mortal prepareth an essence in the stomach, and upholdeth the default of the body. The only cause whereof is, that of man which is eternal might live forever, and that which is mortal might die according to its frailty. Such is the body, such is the eternal that comes from that body. This is that which confounds all philosophy, that the mortal should domineer, and as it were be a sway as it listeth over that which is eternal, and that this also should depend on man, who thereby is made more companion of that which is eternal than if his mortal and eternal both floweth from himself. Whence we may conclude, that all creatures should live together, the reasonable and unreasonable, one being serviceable to another, the eternal planted into the mortal, and these two dwelling together. Hence philosophy teacheth, that all those things cannot be destroyed and confumed that live together without squabbling and fighting, without guile and deceit, without good and evil. Which otherwise would be, if one should oppose another. Those have no knowledge or judgment in whom the eternal dwelleth not. But those things in whom the eternal is, cannot be destitute of understanding. When things so fell at odds as to clash one with another, one eternal was forked to give an account and make satisfaction of wrongs to another. And whereas recompense belongs to the eternal, it must not be repaid by that which is mortal. And though bodies may pacify and bear with one another, yet if anything be left here, that is eternal. Therefore that onely is judged that is eternal in us. And though one exact upon or judge another, yet all mortal things, which have the eternal in them, must die whether they will or no, so that the eternal only shall stay behind here, without company of the body. Thus the judgment is finished. For that only is eternal, nor is there any more of it to come in the last destruction of every mortal thing. Now if those things, that had the eternal in them, have so perished, nothing now remaineth but what was eternal of itself, and did nourish and increase that which was mortal. That which is good for nothing doth not tarry in the creature. All other things are only for the sake of that which is eternal. Hence also it is that which hath the eternal in itself, and with it all things that maintained it, may die and perish together. That only remaineth that is eternal. Whence the end of all bodily things is evident, even nothing, to which they all revolt. For they are separated from their own essence into nothing, that is, from something into nothing. But man desireth a perfect separation, i.e. of the eternal from the mortal. Now is the judgment, when the fickleness of all things under heaven is proclaimed. If there were no reason why a thing should be fragile, the creature should never die, no death should be in it, but all things would be eternal. The only reason whereof is this, because we mortals live not in righteousness, we judge not right judgment among ourselves one toward another, nor have we received the power of the eternal to judge. These things belong to the eternal, which seeing it ought to be so, all we must of necessity be brought and come together. Thus have we found the dissolution of all things. Text 24. Seeing then all things were created and have their end also out of the first great mystery, as hath been said, it is evident by consequence that there is some great mystery, which is no other than as if a house should be built by the command of a word. Understand it thus, that the mystery, it applied itself to the soul supreme, so it is possible that a man may bring fire out of that which is not fire, where no fire is. A flint hath no fire in itself, though fire come out of it. Know therefore, that all the first mysteries lay hid and did exist in the great mystery in a threefold manner, in respect of things vegetable, elementary, and sensible. The vegetables were many hundreds, many thousands. Everything had its own special kind in the great mystery. To the elements did there but 4 belong, for they had but 4 principles. But men had 600. Crump-feet men had 1, the Cyclopes another, giants another, the metallai another. So had they that dwell on the earth, in the air, in the water, and in the fire. Things also that grow had every one its own proper mystery in the Great Mysterie, whence came out many kinds of creatures. So many trees, so many men, so many mysteries too. But the Eternal onely doth bear rule in man, and in his whole mystery, and no more in one than in another. In the Great Mysterie there was not any kind but might infinitely be formed and digested, one different from another. All which must perish. What more might have been made from thence we forbear to mention. But that there should be a new Great Mysterie is impossible, annals that could be made more miraculous, which by reason of its wonderful nature we cannot sufficiently search out. The Second Book. Text 1. Seeing then there was something by which, when it was separated, all things were created. First we must conclude that there is some difference of the gods, which at this, sith the things created are divided into eternal and mortal. The reason whereof is, because there was another creator of the mysteries, besides the chiefest and most high. For the most high creator ought to be the judge and corrector of all the creatures, who should know how much was bestowed on them whereby they might do either good or evil, though they had it not, immediately, from him. Moreover, the creatures are always egged on and provoked rather to evil, compelled thereto by the fates, stars, and by the infernal one, which by no means could have been, if they had proceeded out of the Most High himself, that we should be forced into those properties of good and evil, but should in all things have had free will, without any such violent instigation. Yet nevertheless the creature hath not so much wisdom as to know good or evil, to understand the eternal and mortal. For there are many fondlies and mad men, scarce a wise man of 1,000. Most are false prophets, teachers of lies, masters of folly and ignorance, who are accounted for the most eminent, though they be nothing so. And the reason is plain, for such creatures are we, whose masters teach us no perfect good, but are rather seasoned by the mortal God who had some power in the Great Mysterie, yet are they ordained by the Eternal for judgment both to themselves and us. Text 2. Now if it were necessary that all things that were made should consist of, and proceed from 4 only, as by the separation we know it was, those 4 only must be the matrixes of all the creatners, which we call the elements. And though ever a creature be yet an element or may have some share of the element, yet it is not like the element, but like the spirit of the element. Nothing can subsist without an element. Nor can the elements themselves stand together. There is not anything that consisteth either in 4, 3, or 2 elements, but one element standeth by itself apart, and every creature hath but own element. They are altogether blind who take that which is moist for the element of water, or that which burneth for the element of fire. We must not limit an element to a body, substance, or quality. That which we see is only the subject or receptacle. The element is a spirit of lives and grows in those things, as the soul in the body. This is the first matter of the elements that can neither be seen nor felt, and yet is in all things. The STTST matter of the elements is nothing else but that life which the creatures have. If any die, that subsisteth no more in any element, but in the ultimate matter, wherein is no task, force or virtue. Text 3. Whereas all things that could be created were made of 4 mothers, viz. the 4 elements. Take notice further, that those 4 elements were sufficient for all things that were to be created, nor was it requisite that there should be more or less. In things mortal there can no more but 4 natures subsist. But in things immortal the temperaments may subsist, though the elements cannot. Whatever is, as I call it, an elementure, that may be dissolved. But on the contrary, the temperature cannot be dissolved. For such is the condition thereof, that nothing can be added thereto or taken from it, nothing thereof can putrefy or perish. And saying that condition is mortal, as hath been said, we must know that all things do subsist in 4 natures, and that every nature retains the name of its element. As the element of fire is hot, the element of earth cold, the element of water is moist, the element of air dry. Where we must as well consider, that every of the said natures is peculiarly such a one by itself apart. For fire is onely hot, and not dry, nor moist. The earth is onely cold, not dry, nor moist. The water is onely moist, not hot, nor cold. The air is only dry, not hot, nor cold. And therefore are they called elements, having only one simple, not a double, nature. but their manifestation through all the creatures must be understood as an element that may subsist with a substance and body, and can their work. The highest knowledge concerning the elements is this, that every one of them hath but one only simple nature, either moist, or dry, or cold, or hot, which is from the condition of spirits. For every spirit hath a simple, not a double nature, and so have the elements too. Text 4. Though we mortals have compounds in us, as hot and moist, yet far otherwise than the ancients imagined. For the colic is of the element of fire, yet not compounded of hoarness and dryness, but is only hot, and so the other complexions. Therefore if we find any disease mixed with heat and drought, we may suppose that two elements are there, one in the liver, another in the spleen, and so in the other members. There are not two elements in one member. For certain it is, that every member hath a peculiar element, which we leave to physicians to define. But this cannot well be affirmed, that two elements should consist both together, or that one and the same element should be both hot and moist. Nor can there be any such compound. There are no compounded elements, for the reason before given. Where there is heat, there is neither cold, nor drought, nor moisture. So where there is coldness, there is none of all the rest. The same may be said of moisture and dryness. Every element is simple and solitary by itself, not mixed in composition. The possibility which philosophers talk of, concerning a conjunction of the elements, is as much as comes to nothing. For no element of water hath any heat in it, nor can there be any heat in moisture. Every element is alone by itself. So also cold cannot of itself endure dryness, it subsisteth pure by itself. And thus much be spoken to be understood of the proper essence of the elements. All dryness is a dissolution of cold. As moisture and dryness cannot be mixed, so much less can coldness and dryness or moisture, or heat and dryness close or consist together. For as heat and cold are contrary things, so heat and cold have a contrariety against moist and dry. Text 5. Because all things are constituted of the four elements, therefore to go about to prove that those elements must necessarily be mixed together is very erroneous. For every mixture is a composition. Therefore they cannot be a mystery, because they are compounded. Every mystery is simple, and one only element. Now the difference betwixt the elements and compounds is this. An element, and so may a mystery too, can generate something else out of it. A compound can generate nothing, but what is like itself, as men beget men. But a mystery doth not produce a mystery like itself, but a contrary thing, as a divertalum. The element of fire is the generatrix of the stars, planets, and the whole firmament, yet neither of them is made and formed like this. The element of water made water, which is altogether contrary to the element of water, for that of itself is not so moist as the element of water. The very element itself of water hath such moisture that will soften stones and hard metals. The substantial water taketh away that excellent virtue of mollifying, that its power is not perfect. The element of air is so dry that it can dry up all waters in a moment. But that force is taken away and broken by the substantial air. The element of earth is so cold, that it would bring all things to the ultimate matter, as water into crystal, and into dulec, living creatures into marble, trees into giants. The fundamental of the elements that may be known is this, to understand, that they are of such an excellent and quick activity or efficacy, that nothing besides can be found or imagined like them. The things wherein those are, be attracted and assumed by them, as fate, that may become corporal, yet hath not one whit of virtue without them. Text 6. That we may more fully understand what an element is, we must know that an element is nothing but a soul. Not as though it were of the same essence with a soul, but that it hath something like to it. The difference between the soul of an element and the eternal soul is this. The soul of the elements is the life of all creatures. The fire that burneth is not the element of fire, as we see, but its soul which we cannot see is the element and life of fire. Now the element of fire may be no less in a green stick than it is in the fire, but the very life is not alike there as it is in fire. This then is the difference between the soul and the life. If fire live, it burneth, but if it be in the soul, that is, in its element, then it cannot burn. Nor doth it follow, that a cold thing must needs proceed from a cold element, for oft times it is from a hot one. And many cold things come from the element of fire. Whatsoever doth grow, is from the element of fire, but in another form. Whatever is fixed, is from the element of earth. That which nourisheth, is from the element of air. And that which consumeth, is of the element of water. To grow is the property only of fire. When that faileth or goeth out, there is no increase. Were it not for the element of earth, there would be no end of growth. 'Tis that fixeth, that is, it limiteth the element of sire. So were it not for the element of air, there could be no nourishment. For all things are nourished by the air only. Also nothing could be dissolved or consumed, were it not for the element of water, by which all things are mortified and brought to nothing. Text 7. But though the elements are thus hid, and do altogether exist invisible and insensible in other things, yet have they power to bring forth their mysteries. Thus the element of fire sent forth the firmament, not in respect of the bodies, but in respect of the elementa essence. The sun hath another body besides what it had from the element of fire. Yet this is essentially in it with heat. Nor is the heat thereof by motion and rotation, but it is from itself. The sun warm as well as shine if it stood still and did never move at all. Crystal made the sun of the element of fire, though this hath no other body but what it had from the element of fire. Thence, as I may so speak, are the bodied elements. The moon and other stars also had their beginning from the element of fire, but only of a red color, in which is no heat or burning, but hath only a kind of deadish luster cleaving to it. And though various signas in respect of form and shape appear in heaven, of which we will not now speak, yet such a form is meant as we have here on earth. And not one only, but divers, some whereof we know, others we do not. For when the mystery of the element of fire was separated, everything came forth, such as we now see it. The stars then are the daughters of the element of fire, and heaven is nothing but a chaos, that is, a vapor breathing out of the firmament, but so hot as cannot be expressed. That fervor or burning heat is the cause of lightnings, glooms, and appearances. In that region is the pure element of fire, of which more largely in its place. Text 8. As the fire brought forth various shapes and essences, in the same manner also did the element of air produce the like, though the four elements differ somewhat in those things that are gendered out of themselves. For every of them gendered some one thing in special and peculiar to itself. The firmament is like none of the other three. Fate is from the air, yet is it not like any of the three rest. Those that belong to the earth are not in the least like any of the other three. So likewise is it with sea monsters in relation to other things. Every creature begot both reasonable and unreasonable creatures in itself. Heaven, as well as the element of earth, hath rational creatures in the firmaments. In like manner the fate of the air is distinguished in its signature by reason and brutishness. The same also is true of the earth and water. Now who is he that can tell us what the truth is which within the four sealed elements? Who are they to whom the true faith and right way of salvation is committed and entrusted, or who alone are they that shall inherit eternity, which we will now pass by? It must needs be, that men live in all four, as if they did but in one element, to wit, the earth. As touching destiny, we are to understand, that its generation out of the element is manifold, yet without any body and substance, according to the property of the air, which is not corporeal, and its habitation. Some are corporeal, others cannot be touched, as we know. Text 9. Most manifest it is, that out of one seed the root sprouteth into many sprigs, then into the stalk, afterwards the boughs shoot out, lastly the flower, fruit and seed put forth. Just so is it in the various procreations out of the four elements. All which procreations that are from one element cleave close to each other, as an herb groweth from one seed, though they be not all promiscuously alike to their seed. The creatures which are made of the water are partly men, partly living creatures, and partly the food of both. One element clearly discovereth its own signature, want, and sustentation, as also hinteth its course and coming, which may easily be known by the stars, not as though the stars do guide and govern us, but they keep pace with us, and imitate the inward motion of our body. Whatever is made in the element of earth, is also made in the element of water. For lorend is the commotion of the change of that element of water. When this moveth itself in the element of water, yet then is the element of earth moved too. Lorand is like a comet or blazing star. The monster of the sea may be considered as the air hour of the firmament, so that a peculiar world, with its mystery, to the end of the world, may be found out in the water. They have the same principle with the other elements. Their end is no other, but as the rest of the elements is. The only difference is of the forms, essence, and natures that happen to them with their signatures and elements. Hence we may find 4 worlds, according to the 4 elements and primary habitations, but there is but one eternal, in righteousness, equally to be known in all 4. Text 10. From the element of earth we may learn very much, that out of it we came. Every like knoweth its like. The knowledge of the other elements floweth from philosophy. But this is a thing like us, issuing from experience, out of which afterward philosophy groweth up. But as the element of earth procreated a signature, so likewise did all the rest. As we have stones, so have the other elements as many. Indeed those stones are not like ours, but are made after their own proper form. The rest of the elements have their minerals too, as well as we. The celestial firmament hath minerals both of flowers and stones, which we may rank amongst the miracles. Though here we may easily be deceived, and quickly run ourselves aground while we stickle so much to have the natural courses reckoned among proties, and that this or that hue of the firmament foresheweth some singular thing. Thus we presage like prophets, whereas we should rather conclude that such things come to pass according to the natural course of the firmament. But if any such thing should at any time so fall out, we should believe that such was our course and state. Meanwhile if anything of the elements be faulty, that same will enfeeble the rest. For all things should run in a perfect and uninterrupted course. And though the other 3 elements serve to nourish us, yet are they ready to serve the firmament, and the air, and the water too, and those things that are in them. One thing is nourished by another, as many trees in an orchard. And we may take notice of the slips and failings of the firmament, as well as the firmament doth observe our defects. The same may be said of all the rest. Text 11. It is silly and vain philosophy to place all happiness and eternity in our element of earth. A foolish opinion it is, to boast that we only of all creatures are the most noble. There are more worlds than one, nor are there none besides us in our own. But this ignorance is much more capital, that we know not those men who are of the same element with us, as the nocturnals, gnomes, and sea, who though they live not in the clear glory of heaven, nor have any light of the firmament, but hate what we love, and love what we hate, and though they are not like us in form, essence, or sustentation, yet is there no cause of wonder, for they were made such in the Great Mysterie. We are not all that were made, there are many more, whom we know not of. Therefore we must conclude, that there were more bodies than only one simple body shut up in the Great Mysterie, though in general there was but eternal and mortal there. But in what various shapes and sorts they brought forth, no man can tell. This doubt will be wholly removed when the eternity of all those things shall meet together. Then certainly many unknown things shall be fully found out and made known many ways, not only of those things which have the eternal in themselves, but also of those things which have sustained and nourished that eternal. There is a twofold eternal, one of the kingdom and domination, the other of ornament and honor. That flowers should not be eternal is clean contrary to philosophy, which though they wither and perish, yet at last they shall appear in the general meeting together of all things. There is nothing created out of the Great Mysterie but shall have an image without the firmament. Text 12. There ought to be neither more nor less than 4 mothers of all things, as all procreations shew. Not that the Great Mysterie, whereof we now treat, can be found out by way of universal demonstration what manner of thing it is, according to its properties in the beginning, but the Great Mysterie is rather known and understood by the last mysteries and by the procreations which did spring and proceed out of the first. 'Tis not the beginning, but the end that mocketh a man a master and philosopher. The knowledge of a thing according to its perfect nature is found out only in the end of its being. Possibly there might have been more elements made than now there be, but in the utmost knowledge of all things there are but 4 to be found. And though we may suppose that it had been easy for God, who created but 4, to have made them many more, yet when we see that all mortal things consist but of 4 only, we may conclude that more than these could not well stand together. And it is most likely that when the said 4 elements perish, that then others shall arise according to every essence unlike the former, or that after the destruction of the creatures already made, there shall be a new Great Mysterie, the knowledge whereof will be greater and better than of the former. But this we lay not here as a fundamental, yet he that would understand the beginning of the world must of necessity consider that it had its rise out of the elements. And as there are 4 elements, so there are 4 worlds, and in every one a peculiar kind, taught how to subsist in their necessities. Text 13. But though all things subsist in the said 4 elements, we do not mean that the 4 elements are in all things, or that the 4 elements dwell in all. The reason is, because the world which is separate and procreated of the element of fire hath no need of air, water, or earth. So the world of air needeth none of the other 3, which is true also of the earth and water. Concerning the elements, we teach not that the world cannot be preserved without the 4 elements, but rather that everything is preserved by that one element from whence it sprang. And though I deny not, but that the firmament doth nourish the world by its elementary virtues which do wholly descend fiery on the earth, yet that nourishment is not necessary. Nor will the world perish of itself, for it hath sufficient to sustain itself, as the other world maintaineth itself without the help of the earth. As for example, the water's earth contributeth nothing to its proper essence, nor the earth's water to it. So is it with the air. But 'tis not sufficient that every world doth solitarily or of itself subsist in its element, but rather that the light from heaven is as a kind of extract of the 4 elements, most excellent in a full and perfect propriety. But let none think that the sun or planets did receive their lustre or motion from the element of fire, but rather from the mystery. The brightness of the firmament that doth irradiate the world did not flow from the element of fire, but from the mystery. The earth bringeth trone, the water tour, the air sames. These proceed not from the element, but from the mystery, yet are in the element. Thus the 4 worlds that came out of the mysteries do agree to help each other, to nourish and sustain one another, not from the nature of elements, for they themselves are elements. Text 14. It is not from the elements that man doth live, see, hear, and see, but from the mysteries, or rather from the monarchy, and so all things else. The elementary thing is but an inn and a repast. Know also that whatsoever is eternal cometh from the mystery, and is the same thing. Dogs die, but their mystery doth not. Man dieth, but his mystery surviveth, and much more his soul, whereby he is by so many degrees more excellent than a dog. The same may be said of all things that grow. Hence is that mistake, that all creatures that ever were shall not appear essentially as they do now, but mystically in the last great new mystery. We say not that the mystery is an essence like that which is immortal, but that it is perfectly a mystery. The element of fire hath a mystery in it, from which the other 3 have their light, luster, influence, growth, and not from the element. Those mysteries also may subsist without an element, as an element may without a mystery. Observe further, that the element of air hath a mystery in it, by which all the other 3, and itself too, are nourished, not elementarily of itself, but mystically by the element. The element of earth hath in it a mystery of mansion and fixation, by virtue whereof the other continue and increase, that nothing perish. The element of water hath a mystery of sustentation for all the rest, and preserveth all that is in them from destruction. In this respect there is difference between an element and a mystery. One is mortal and corruptible from the elements, the other is durable in the last great mystery, wherein all things shall be renewed, but nothing made that was not before. Text 15. We conclude then that all the elements cannot be joined together, but that they be solitarily and unmixedly altogether either airy, or fiery, or earthy, or watery. We have also dispatched this, that every element maintaineth itself, and that which doth come from it, as its own world. Therefore a medicine of the element water will do no good to those things that are of the element of earth, or of any other element, but only to the nymphs, sirens, and such like. So a medicine of the earth will not help the other 3 worlds, but only the living creatures of its own world. And so of the air, there are diseases, physicians, skillful and unskillful, in the air, which have their peculiar motion there, as in their own world. The same may be said of fire. Now if it so chance that at any time the nymphs couple with earthy things and beget children, that is to be imputed to the faculty or power of ravishment. Airy things, as the Melusines, may ravish earthy things. The Trifertes are snacked out of the fire by earthy things. If then those 3 foreign worlds plant men in our world, as we have said, they are to be known in their whole essence as gods in respect of us, by reason of that huge distance and very strange essence which they have. But on the other hand, if any of us be caught away by them, there is a contrary rape from us to them. Thus one element hath no need of another. One is but the cabinet or conceptacle of the other. As water and earth separate from each other, so air and fire have their peculiar lots, without any other contiguity, but like walls, and according to the inclination of the mysteries out of all the four. Text 16. But if there shall be any such meeting or conjunction, whereby all things return into their former essence, then that will be a mystery, according to the aspect and face of the element. For there no bodily thing by generation can appear, but the appearance and presentaneous exhibition shall fill that place wherein all creatures were contained, and so every one shall know those things that were made either before or after him, as if he had seen them before with his eyes, yet nevertheless here the sense of the last great mystery is hidden. Nor shall that be known by nature, but by the knowledge of the causes of the last separation of the elements and all the creatures, when every one shall give an account of his death. This is the case of the mortal, and of the living, and of that which endureth to the end. There will be the only judge that hath eternal power, and who hath been the alone judge in all ages. This is the cause of all religions, and the origin all of religious men worship the gods, all which custom is false and erroneous. For there was never any other but one God, who is the eternal judge. It is too blasphemous foolishness to worship a mortal, fraile, perishing rotten creature instead of the author of all things, and ruler of eternity. Whatsoever is mortal hath no power to rule and reign. There is then but one only way and religion, and it is madness to affirm more. Text 17. When all creatures thus return their predestinations, then there will be a mystery. Predestination is the last matter, which will be without an element, and without a present essence, but the things that shall then abide will be more temperate and uncorrupt. This must not be understood of the spirit, but of nature, with this evidence, that something eternal cometh in the room of that which is mortal. For if insensible plant perish, its place is supplied by that which is eternal. Nor is there any one fraile or mortal thing in all the world which doth not substitute something that is eternal in its place. Nothing is empty or vain, no corruptible thing was created without a succession of that which is eternal. When all creatures come to an end, then those things that are eternal shall meet and come together, not only as nourishments, but rather to the office or chief rule of nature both in the mortal and eternal. Thus the eternal is a sign or token of the dissolution of nature, and not the beginning or principle of things created. It is in all things which no nature is destitute of. And though the fatals also, as the Melusines and nymphs shall leave the eternal behind them, yet we shall say nothing of their corruptions at this time. As there are four worlds, so we must know that there is a manifold putrefaction. There is an earthy, there is an airy, there is a fiery, and a watery putrefaction. Everything, and what was created with it, together with the eternal that remaineth, is brought and turned to destruction. Yet those four putrefactions shall bring back their eternal into one similitude with renown and glory, not with its works, but with its essence. A solitary habitation is a kind of eternity, but abounding in many separations or distinctions. Text 18. We are come now to speak of the evestrum, which according to its essence is either mortal or immortal. The evester is a thing like a shadow on the wall. The shadow riseth and waxeth greater as the body doth, and continueth with it even unto its last matter. The evestrum takes its beginning at the first generation of every. Things animate and inanimate, sensible and insensible, and whatsoever casteth a shadow, all of them have their evester. Trarams is the shadow of an invisible essence. It springeth up with the reason and imagination of intelligent and brute creatures. To discourse rightly or philosophically of the evestrum and trarams requireth the highest wisdom. The evester mocketh to prophesy. Trarams giveth sharpness of wit. To foretell what shall befall a man, beast, tree, and sea, is by the shadowy evester, but the reason why it should be so, is from the trarami. Some evesters have a beginning, some have not. Such as have a beginning may be dissolved, with the surviving eternal. That which is without beginning hath power in the understanding to whet or provoke that which hath a beginning towards the traramium. The mortal evester knoweth the eternal. This knowledge is the mother of a prophet. The ground of every understanding is extracted and culled out of the evester, as it were by the light of nature. A prophet therefore doth evestrate, that is, he doth prophesy from the evester. But if a spirit prophesy, it doth so without the light of nature, and therefore may deceive us, being full of guile and doubtful, as well as prove certain and true. Thus trarams also would be divided in the shadow of reason. Text 19. Again, when all things shall be dissolved, then evester and trarams too shall come to an end, yet not without some relics of eternity. The evester is no otherwise but as it were the eternal of the firmament in the four worlds. The firmament is fourfold, divided into four perfect essences, according to the four worlds, every world perfectly respecting its own creature, being just such another thing as itself is. One creature out of the firmament in the earth, one in the water, air, fire. The firmament that is in the evester is dispersed. Those be not stars which we see, they are the firmaments of the nymphs, which are not stars, nor have any use of stars, but have their peculiar and proper firmament, as the fates they have a fiery one. Every one hath in heaven, earth, mansion, habitation, firmament, stars, planets, and other such like, which are not in the least one like a none other, as water and fire, substance and that which cannot be felt, visible and invisible are to each other, so are those things. In these the evester is divided in the fatals, and its shadow stayeth behind the essence after the dissolution, and the evester when the fire is out cleaveth to the fiery man, as another to the watery, and so to the earthy. This evester is that which deceiveth and mocketh the world mad, cunningly covering itself from one world to another, shewing visions, flashes, signas, forms and shapes. Hence Ari saith the evester of comets, the evester of impressions, the evester of miracles. But these three evesters are prophesying evesters, or shady eviters. The high and noble mind is with the prophetic and umbratic evesters. Text 20. The prophetic evester is first necessary to be known. For the great turban, which presageth all things that are in the four worlds, is of the same kind of essence. Whatsoever shall fall out monstrously, or happen contrary to nature, or contrary to life and common expectation, is known by the prophetic evester, which overshadoweth itself, and is taken out of the great turban. A prophet must of necessity know the great turban. It is united to reason, and hard to be found out. But 'tis possible for man to know the great turban, even to its utmost resolution. From this it was that all the prophets spake. For in it are all the signas of the world. Out of it are all evesters begotten. By it the comets, those prodigious stars, which are besides the usual course of heaven, are shadowed. All impressions have their origin all from the turban, not from the firmament or stars. When any strange and uncouth thing is at hand, there are forerunners and harbingers sent forth, by whom the evil that shall befall a people is presaged to them. And those presagings are not from nature, but from the prophetic all evester. All pestilences, all wars, all seditions, have their presages from the turban. He that knoweth the evester is a prophet, and can tell things to come. The Most High over all doth not discourse with mortals, nor doth he send his angels to them from his throne and dwelling place to declare such things. But those things are foreknown and understood from the great turban, which many pagans and Jews, darkened in the true sense and understanding, have worshipped as a god. Text 21. Sith that the shadowed evester beginneth and springeth up with every creature, we must know that the fortune and life of that thing where the evester is may be prognosticated by it. For example, when a child is born, at the same time the evester is born with him, continually manifest in him, that it presageth from the cradle to the very hour of death, and can shew what will become of that infant. So when one is ready to die, death seizeth not on him till the evester hath first passed sentence, either by blow, bruise, or fall, or some such other kind of example, by which if a man perceive the evester, he may see a signa of his approaching death. The evester is united to the eternal. For a man's evester remaineth in the earth after his death, and hinteth in its kind whether the man be in bliss or misery. Nor ought we to say that it is the spirit or soul of a man, as simple people speak, or that it is the dead man that walketh, but it is the dead man's evester, which departeth not hence till the last minute when all things shall come together. This evester worketh strange things. Holy men wrought miracles by their evester onely. As the sun by his shining gives forth his heat, nature and essence, so is it with the divining and prophetic all evesters in us, to which we should give credit. These rule and moderate sleep, fond dreams, prefigurations of things to come, the natures of things, reason, concupiscences and thoughts. Text 22. Whereas things to come may thus be known before in the elements, by that wherein the evesters dwell. Some evesters will be in the water, some in looking glasses, some in crystals, some in polished muskless. Some will be known by the commotions of waters, some by songs and by the mind. For all these can, as I speak, evestrate. The most great and blessed God hath a mysterial evester, in which his essence and property is beheld. Every good, and every enlightened thing is known by the mysterious evester. On the contrary, the damned hath his evester in the world, by which the evil is known, and all whatsoever violateth and breaketh the law of nature. Although those two may evestrate, yet do they nothing belong to our life. For we shall not know ourselves but by our own evester. Everything hath an evester, all which likewise are prophets, either reasonable or unreasonable, sensible or insensible. The evester is a spirit, which teacheth astronomy. Not that it is learned by nativities and prognostications from the stars, but its esse, as I may so say, is from the evesters. Its ends, or being, is in these, as an image in a glass, or as a shade in water or the earth. As growing things are increased and diminished, just so it is with the stars. Not that their course is such of their own nature, and that moist and cold rise out of the earth, but only because the essence of the earth is such. It is shadowed in heaven but by parts, yet as an evester, but not as a power. Text 23. Such kind of evesters also will be corrupted, yet shall they not perish without something eternal. Nor shall the evesters themselves be so much regarded, for they shall fully and wholly dwell with or in those things to whom they belong. Hence let every man now advise with himself, that above all things he admonish and learn to know himself. The nature and number of the evesters is infinite. These lead men about in their sleep, foreshew good and evil, search out the thoughts, perform work and do business without bodily motion. So wonderful a thing is the evester, the mother of all things in the prophets, astronomers, and physicians. If the understanding come not from the evester, there can be no knowledge of nature. As theft pointeth to the gallows, and the clouds to rain, and urine to the disease, so the evester sheweth all things without exception. From it the sibyls and prophets spake, but as it were drowsily and dreamingly. After this manner are the evesters in the four worlds, one being always a presage to another, communicateth an image and a miracle, which by their dissolution and regeneration will be much more to be admired. Nor shall we forbear to say, that the evester is an eternal relict, the support of religions, and the operation of the celestials. Nothing but felicity, blessedness, the chiefest good and the last judgment move and stir us up to seek and search more narrowly and exactly after the difference between those two, things or evesters, that is, between the true and false, which is to be considered and known, not spiritually, but naturally. The third book. Text 1. Everything that hath a being must of necessity have a body. The manner and reason thereof is, that we may know it is like a smoky spirit that hath neither substance, nor body, nor can be felt. And though it be neither of these, yet both bodies and substances may proceed out of it. Thus may we conceive a fuming arsenic, that after the generation of a body there is no more of the fume of the spirit to be seen, no more than if all were turned into a body, which yet is not so, for it still remaineth most subtle in that place of generation. And so both the visible and invisible are brought forth together by separation. After this way and manner all things are propagated. Wood hath still a surviving spirit from which it is separate. So have stones, and all things else, none excepted. For their essence still remaineth just as it was separate from them. Man likewise is nothing but a relic and the remainder of smoke separate. But yet note that he was a kind of spirit before. Of this dross was man made, and is a thing most subtil in spirit. Yea, he is that very spirit, that is, a discovery or sign of a twofold eternal, one of Calaruthum, the other of Meritorium. Caelruth is a note or discovery in the first eternal. This seeketh or desireth the other, that is, God. The cause thereof is natural, because all things affect and contend for that out of which they came, and desire those natures that are nearest to them. Whatsoever the Creator did give or use when he made a thing, that very same thing also doth the thing created earnestly desire and praise after. Yet we must know, that the creature doth not desire his Creator by nature or natural instinct, but rather seeks after that out of which it came. Thus man's body doth not desire God, but the matter out of which it was separated, for it was not taken out of God. And that matter is the life and habitation wherein the eternal meritorium dwelleth. Thus everything returneth to its own essence. Text 2. Now seeing everything is greedily desirous of its original, viz., of the mystery out of which it proceeded, we are further to consider that that thing is everlasting life, and that which cometh from thence is mortal. Nevertheless in the mort all there abideth that which is eternal, to wit, the soul, as may elsewhere be learned. And though corruptible things must return to their former state, it is because the durable things may be knit together, and so there may a collection and union of things be made. The form and substance of things both perishing and permanent is from the spirit of smoke, just as hail or lightning is from the cloud, which things have a body, but that matter out of which they came is invisible. We must conclude that all things proceed from the invisi but without any hurt or damage to it, and that matter hath power always to renew the same thing again. Hence it is, that the whole world passeth away like a ship, and returneth again to the same matter of the spirit of smoke, and gendereth and nourisheth without any tangible essence. In this respect the first may be brought forth the second time. Hereby also we know there was no creature begotten, but made and procreated. For so the chiefest good ordained in the beginning, that everything should proceed out of the invisible, and be made bodily, and then be separated again from the body, and so become invisible again, then all things are coupled and united again, and brought back to the first matter. And though they are so united, yet is there some difference and diversity among them. One receives entertainment from another, one gives entertainment to another. That first matter is the habitation of all things, both sensible and insensible must all return to that place and condition. Whether irrational or irrational, nothing can escape this change, but shall certainly repair and hasten to its dwelling whence it came. Text 3. Every body or tangible substance is nothing but a curdled fume, whence we may conclude that there is a manifold coagulation, one of wood, another of stones, a third of metals. But the body is nothing but a fume, smoking out of the matter or matrix in which it is. So that which groweth out of the earth is a fume rising out of the moisture of mercury, which is various, and sendeth forth several fumes for herbs, trees, and other such like, which fume when it breaks forth of its first matter, essence or original, or as soon as it doth first breath out of the matrix and touch or stop the outward air, is presently curdled. This fume then doth constantly and continually evaporate. So long as that a pulse keeps warm, so long a thing will grow. When the boiling saith there is no more steam, and so the curdling and increase comes to an end. Wood is the smoke of Dirces. Therein lieth the specific matter, of which is made. Nor is it made of that fume onely, but it may be made of some other dersic matter. In like manner lephas is the seething matter from whose fume all herbs do spring. Only lepha and nothing else is the sole predestination of herbs. God is much more wonderful in specifics than in all other natures. Stanner is the mother of metals black small square which ministreth the first matter to metal by its stream. Metals are nothing but thick-ned smoke from Stanner. Inur is the smoke of stones. Briefly, whatsoever hath a body is nothing but curdled smoke, wherein a particular predestination lieth hid. And all things shall at last vanish like smoke. For that specific which doth coagulate hath power but for a certain appointed time. The same must be understood of the coagulation. For all bodies shall pass away and vanish into nothing but smoke, they shall all end in a fume. This is the end of things corporeal both living and dead. Text 4. Man is a coagulated fume. The coagulation of the spermatic matter is made of nothing but the seething vapors and spermatic members of the body. This shall be resolved again into the like vapor, that the end may be as the beginning was. We see nothing in our own selves but thick-ned smoke made up into a man by humane predestination. All that we take and eat is but a thick-ned fume from the humours or moisture. What we eat is consumed by the life, upon this score, that the coagulation might melt and be dissolved again, as the sun thaweth the ice, that it may pass into the air like smoke. Life wasteth all things. It is a spirit that consumeth all substances and bodily things. Take notice here of the separation of the digested mystery. If everything return to its first state whence it came, then that which we eat will be consumed together with our life. This is meant of those things that are not changed. For transmutation cannot be beaten back or hindered. Life is the cause of all transmutation. So then transmutation is altered into fragility of body, but is separated again from the body. When it putrefieth, transmutation hath no more force. The mystery of that which is separated follows in putrefaction. All the properties which man hath in him of herbs and other things are separated one from another, everything packing to its own essence. This separation is like that when 10 or 12 things are mixed together, and then separated again, that so every one may receive its peculiar essence. Thus oft eating is nothing but a dissolution of bodies. Whence the matter of bodies is separated by vomits and purges, that it becomes nothing but a stinking fume, mixed with something that is good. Nature only affecteth that which is subtil or pure, the gross it rejecteth. The life dissolveth stones, metals, the earth, and all things. They have no other separation from the body but by the life. Text 5. Again, we are as well to understand how everything receiveth its essence. This cannot more fitly be compared to anything than to fire, which we strike out of a hard flint, flaming and burning contrary to all natural knowledge. As that hidden fire breaks forth, and burneth, in the same manner and form is the essence brought into its nature. Here consider, that in the beginning there was but one thing, without any inclination and form, from which afterwards all things came forth. That rise or original was no other but as a temperate color, suppose purple, having no inclination in it to any other color, but plainly to be seen in its just temperature. Yet in it are all colors. The red, green, azure, yellow, white, black color cannot be separated from it. And every one of these colors have many dark colors come from them, yet every one throughly and rightly tinctured by itself. And though various and contrary colors lie hid in them, yet all are hid under one. After the same manner everything had its essence in the Great Mysterie, which afterward the supreme workmaster separated. Crystal will strike fire, not from a fiery nature, but from solidity and hardness. This also hath the other elements in it, not essentially, but materially, viz. the burning fire, the breathing air, the moistening water, the black and dry earth. Besides all these it hath all colors, but hidden in it, in the mixture of their qualities, as fire in steel, which discovereth itself neither by burning, nor shining, nor casting any color. In this respect all colors and all the elements are in everything. If any be desirous to know how all things should thus come and penetrate into all things, he must believe that all this came to pass and was exactly and accurately ordered by that only one who is the former and architect of all things. Text 6. Although nature, as we have said, be invisibly in bodies and substances, that invisibility comes to visibility by means of those bodies. As is the essence of every, so is it visibly seen in virtues and colors. Invisible bodies have no other, but this kind of bodily consideration. Therefore observe, that invisible things have all the elements in them, and do operate in every element. They can send the fire and virtue of their element out of themselves, they can send forth air, as a man doth his breath, also water, as a man doth urine, they have the nature of earth too, and came from the earth. Take it thus, the liquor or moisture of the earth doth boil daily, and sendeth an high that subtil spirit which it had out of itself. Hereby invisible things and the firmament itself are nourished, which without a vapor cannot be. Things incorporeal can no more live without meat and drink than corporeal things. Therefore stones grow out of the earth, but from a spirit like their own nature. Every stone draweth its own spirit to itself. From such like proceed ghosts and fiery dragons, and many more. If then invisible things as well as visible be conversant in their essence, it is from the nature of the Great Mysterie, as wood is set on fire by a candle or taper, which luseth or wasteth nothing thereby. And though it be not corporeal, yet it must have that which is corporeal to preserve itself alive, to wit, wood. Likewise all invisible things must be sustained, nourished and increased by something visible, with which also at last they shall perish and come to an end all alike, yet nevertheless still keeping their operation and activity in them, without loss or damage of other things, except there be an effusion of those corporeal and visible things. Although that be done by the invisible, and found out or known in the visible, and see. The rest, for doubtless the author wrote more, are not to be found. The end of the books of Paracelsus.